Welcome back to another episode of the Unfiltered Empowered Woman podcast. I am so excited for this episode because it's something that I've been wanting to record for quite a while now. And I'm going to be talking about my own journey with binge eating, but also about the specific methods that I use and why they work so well when it comes to recovery. So before we even get into the episode, I just want to share a little bit about some of the women who've trialed this method, just so that you know that this is the episode for you. So I'm going to keep everyone anonymous. So these are just going to be made up names because these women have told me that they're happy to share their story, but they just don't want their names to be out there, which is fair enough. And I would never break that privacy. I think it's very important as a coach to respect that. So anyway, the first girl, we're going to call her Amy. She came to me. She was binge eating 2-3 times a week. She was someone who felt really awful in her body, obviously kept gaining weight because she was binge eating. And she had tried every single diet out there, but there was just nothing that worked. And she thought that it was her fault, that she had no willpower, that she was a failure, and that she was just going to keep gaining weight forever. And she was throwing away her old clothes. She was, having to buy new clothes every week, well, not every week, but, quite often because she was gaining so much weight. And the Empowered Woman was really her last resort. So what we did is we trialed this method with her, and literally, I'm not even joking, within 6 weeks, she had stopped binge eating. And she has now actually lost 6 kilos. We haven't focused on that, but obviously when you stop binge eating, when you are stopping such a large amount of calories coming in to your body every single week, and you focus more on balance and regulating your nervous system and finding what works and finding, a life that you want, the weight is going to drop off because your body wants to be at your best weight, and it's going to try and get to your healthiest weight always. It's just that we interfere with that by going on diets and doing all these silly things and not listening. And then I want to share another girl as well. Her name is Sarah. And she was someone who came to me, not so much binge eating, but more mindlessly snacking. And when she was preparing her kids' lunches, she would just reach for snacks. She would reach for their food. She would snack throughout the day. And she was a bit hesitant. She's like, oh, I don't really struggle with binge eating per se, but I feel like my snacking and mindless eating is a bit out of control. And I do feel that guilt. And the worst thing for her, I think, or she told me, was that she felt like she always put other people first. And, she always put her kids first, put her husband first, put her friends first. And she was exhausted. She was constantly anxious, constantly feeling like she wasn't good enough, constantly running herself to the ground, and just feeling like, what is the point? Like, I'm just feeling like shit all the time. But the only thing that makes me feel good in the moment is to help others feel good. But obviously that made her feel even worse because she would just run herself to the ground, trying to please everyone else and not putting any time aside for her. So both of these women have gone through my program, and Sarah is now someone who completely stopped her mindless snacking. She actually bought a bikini for the first time, and she wore it to the beach with her kids during the school holidays. She's someone who has now excelled at work. She has just, her life has just opened up for her in so many ways because she's taking back that power, and she feels confident now. She feels like she can set boundaries and she can actually stand up for herself. And I think this is just such a great, what's it called, like testament that this shit works. And if you don't believe me, believe all the hundreds of reviews I have in the testimonial file in my Instagram profile on the highlights. It works. It's gonna work for you too. So my own journey then. So I grew up feeling like I was never good enough. And I know that this very much stems from my dad, and my dad, trying his best to be a good dad and, encouraging me in his own way. And I can see that now. But as a child, I didn't see that. I just saw it as, Dad's never happy. Dad just wants me to win all the time. I'm only worthy of his love when I'm winning. And then when he was away a lot, because he was working away a lot to provide for the family. But as a child, I just saw it as, oh, Dad doesn't love me enough to be home, and I need to please him and bend over backwards to make him happy when he is home. And this then translated into me feeling like I had to do this with all men and never felt like I was enough for anything. When I started high school, I started my first diet, and this was a way for me to quickly gain attention from both men and females. And people saying things like, oh my God, like you have such good willpower, and I wish I could work as hard as you, and I wish I could, be as motivated as you to stick to diets. And this, of course, just fueled my fire. And again, kind of reinforced that belief that the harder you work, the more love you get. So I lost more weight and more weight and more weight. And this eventually led into full-blown anorexia, which I'm not going to talk about in this episode. If that's something that you want to listen to, you can go and search for the episode where I talk about this. In this episode, I want to talk about my binge eating and my anxiety, because obviously, if you feel like you're not good enough, if you feel like you constantly have to work for others' approval, I would like for as long as I can remember up until a few years ago, I literally used to leave every single conversation thinking, oh my God, what are they saying about me? And, did I say the right thing here? And, or maybe I should have said this. And maybe they overreacted in this way because I said this. And I know now that is because I grew up with parents or dad who would come home sometimes be really grumpy and sometimes really happy and sometimes really irritated and sometimes just stressed. And being a hypersensitive woman as I am, I picked up on that and I could read. I knew as soon as he opened the door what mood he was in. And I also learned how I needed to be in order to make him as happy as possible in those moments. And when you grow up and you become that sensitive, you are going to create a lot of anxiety. That part of your brain that registers fear is going to grow, and you're going to be more receptible to anxiety than other people. You're going to pick up on it a lot easier than others, and things that don't stress others out might stress you out because of this. And this can be a superpower, and I'll talk about that in another episode. But it can also be something that really hinders you, and it's something that also affects your impulse control, because you think that you have to act now, otherwise something bad might happen. And this is where the common or that link is between people who are hypersensitive, who struggle with anxiety, and who have don't have much impulse control, do often struggle with addictions. And one of the addictions is often binge eating, because the more dopamine something gives you and the easier it is to get, the larger chance it is for this to become your addiction. So what I did was that when I was dieting, and once I realized that I wanted to recover from my anorexia and I didn't really think that I needed any help, I was like, well, I can do it myself. Because again, I'd been taught that you don't ask for help, asking for help is bad, being vulnerable is bad, and showing people how you actually feel is bad. Like, I'd never really been shown that growing up. So I thought, I have to solve this problem myself. I can't ask for help. I have to do it just me. So I did. And I literally, yes, I would be okay for a couple of days, and then one small thing would happen and that would turn me into a binge. And at the start, this wasn't probably what I would consider binge eating now. It did feel like binge eating at the time because I just felt out of control. But when I compared that to my binges that was happening, 10 years later, I would have looked at that and been like, oh, that was nothing. But this could be that I'd come home from school and there was toast on the bench and peanut butter, and I'd be like, well, I'm just gonna have one. And then I ended up having like 4 slices and be like, oh my God, I just had 4 slices of peanut butter on toast and I feel really bad now. And then I would go out and like exercise and be like, oh, okay, I feel okay again. And this went on for so long, and every single time this happened, the restrictions got worse, but the binge eating also got worse. I didn't gain that much weight because I was really, really good at restricting in between because of my past experience with anorexia. But it was almost like someone had just flicked a switch in my brain, and that I couldn't stick to my crazy diet for longer than a couple of days before something would happen that would spiral me again, which is a good thing in a way, because imagine if I would have stuck to the crazy diet, I probably wouldn't be here by now because I would have starved myself to death. So I am grateful in a way that I did binge, because otherwise, yeah, I probably wouldn't be here. But also, I'm also grateful for the fact that I was struggling for so long, because I have so many tools in my toolbox now. There's literally never been a client that I've had that I felt like, oh, I don't understand what they're going through. I can't connect with her, because I've been through it all. So what started off for me as quite innocently, yeah, sure, like eating a bit extra sometimes, and sometimes I would just feel myself, I want to save myself for dinner, and I would just graze throughout the whole day and snack on things, but I didn't want to have a proper meal because that would make me feel too guilty, so I would just snack instead. Stuff like that. Or I would go out for drinks with my friends and to have some cocktails and some snacks and stuff, and the whole time, like, it looked like they were just having fun and eating, and I probably looked like that too, because on the outside I looked fine, right? But on the inside I remember just thinking, like, how can they sit here with like a bowl of fries in front of them and not inhale the whole thing, or not stress about the potential of inhaling the whole thing, or stressing about the binge that's going to come after this, or sometimes look forward to just like being like, oh my God, can I get to a bit later because I just want to go home and binge. Like, I remember thinking, like, how are they just sitting here thinking this, but no one's actually going home and binging? Or like, am I the only one who has these thoughts, and am I the only one who wants to eat rather than sit here and like talk and have like be with friends? Like, am I the only one who wants to go home and, yeah, be by myself and just eat? And I was stuck in this for 10 years because I just kept saying, like, this is not that bad and I can do it myself, and I will start next I start again next week. But as you would know, if you have struggled with this, it doesn't work like that. And I wish that I had gotten help when I first started noticing that I wasn't happy, that I couldn't, have Nutella at home without eating the whole thing, or that I couldn't buy chocolate or lollies without eating the whole thing, or when I started looking at food as good and bad, because that's where it starts. That's with that anxiousness around food, feeling like your impulse control goes completely out the window as soon as there's high calorie foods around, feeling like you want to save yourself for certain foods. Like, this is where it starts. And so many women that come to me, they are like, oh, I wish I would have reached out, or that I signed up, that last year when I did reach out first time, because now it's, I've gained 10 kilos and it's so much worse than it ever was back then. And I get it, because like it's a scary thing, right? Like signing up and not knowing what to expect, and not knowing what your life could potentially look like when you have overcome binge eating. But isn't it scarier to think that your life could potentially be exactly like it is now for the rest of your life? Like, what is scarier for you? Obviously, you're listening to this podcast because you're someone who values their health, and you value your growth, and you value yourself enough to know that you deserve better. Otherwise, you wouldn't listen to this. You would just go listen to some gossip podcast about nothing. But you obviously want to learn. And if you want to learn, if you want to grow, then you owe it to yourself to actually put the actionable things into place and actually do something about it, not just listen and think, oh, I'll do it later. Because later never happens, that it's never just going to fall into your lap. You actually have to go out and make it happen. So back to my story. I feel like this has gone so back and forth, and this is what happens when I what's it called, free flow, because I just have so much to say and this is so many things, but hopefully you can come along with me on this journey. So when I finished school, I left and I went to Norway, and in Norway I basically lived off just noodles and rice throughout the week, because I was just trying to save money. And then I was working at a cafe at the time, and I remember every time I'd close, and then you would like get to take all the pastries home that weren't sold, because otherwise you throw them in the bin. And I would always take everything home, both because I had no money and I needed the food, but also because I was like, well, if it's free, it doesn't count, right? Like, I can eat it all, and I can't throw it away. Like, I can't possibly think of something worse than throwing food away. So I would take it home and I would eat it all. And then the next day I'd be like, oh, I'm not going to eat today because I feel so bad, and I'm going to fast until whatever time. And obviously that never works. And at like 4 or 5 p.m., I'd be absolutely ravenous and I would binge again, or I would try and go to bed and, try and sleep, but my stomach would just be grumbling. And eventually I would get up in the middle of the night and eat because that impulse control muscle was, yeah, well, asleep, I guess. And then I moved to Australia and this behavior was still going. It, like I said before, it got worse every single year. And when I got to Australia and I moved in with my then partner, it was so bad that on the weekends, I was happy if he had plans, because that meant that I could stay at home and binge. And that, if he'd gone out with his friends, I'd be like, perfect. Like now I have all of this like freedom to just binge eat and no one can say anything about it and no one's gonna know about it. Like I used to literally plan my binges. I was so excited about the weekend because that meant that I now had a whole weekend to binge. So I'd plan everything that I was gonna eat. And if anything would ever interrupt that, I would be fuming. Like I'd be like, no, I cannot come to your freaking birthday party. I am gonna be at home. And obviously I would never tell anyone that I was binge eating, but I would just make up some stupid like random excuse for it. If he was home, I would get food at the shops and drive to some random street in the middle of nowhere and eat it and throw it in someone else's bin because I didn't want anyone to know what I was doing. Sometimes I'd take our roommate's peanut butter and eat it all and then replace it quickly before she got home so that no one would know. And if someone ever did find out, I'd be like, oh, like someone else probably ate it, or I don't know, it wasn't me. I would always make an excuse for it. And I remember so vividly when I was working in disability care, and I used to have this shift that was a night shift from Sunday till Monday. And Sunday was like my last day that I allowed myself to binge, because Monday to Friday was spent, making up for my binges. I was restricting like super hard. And Monday nights used to come and I used to be so full and so sick because I'd eaten so much that I was barely present with these kids. Like I was probably the worst worker ever because I had no energy. I was full of guilt and I felt awful. And one night I remember I literally was just eating dry pasta out of the packet because I had finished all my food that I'd brought to the house to eat, to binge on, but I still didn't feel like I'd gotten to that feeling of complete numbness, which I now know that I hadn't hit that dopamine, like the level of dopamine that I wanted to get from the food wasn't reached. So that's why I had felt like I needed to eat more food. But I will explain that a bit later. And every single Monday, I'd wake up, literally feel like I was hungover because I was so puffy. I felt tired. I felt like sluggish. Going to the gym was such a struggle. And I remember every single Monday being like, why the fuck did I do it again? Like, why did I do that to myself again? I said that I was going to change. And every single Monday, I'd look at like a coach that I could possibly work with. And sometimes I would sign up. But most of the time I'd be like, oh no, I don't need any help. But if it was a nutrition plan or anything, I'd stick to it for a bit and then I'd just be like, nah, not for me. It's not good enough, or doesn't work for me. And then I would binge and then I would just go to my coach and, try another one. And like this went on for so long until I found macro tracking, when I basically, swapped my addiction from binge eating for my addiction for tracking macros and for training, and then it was for working. And this is what happens with addictions when we don't treat the root cause. So what happens with binge eating, and what was happening with me was that I couldn't handle the feelings of not feeling good enough, of having that anxiety, of having, feeling like people were gonna leave me, people didn't love me, I wasn't pretty enough, all of this stuff. I couldn't handle those feelings, so I started looking for dopamine rewards. And these dopamine rewards I was getting from, people telling me I looked a certain way, or achieving things or losing weight. But with dopamine, what happens is if the first time you have a bite of a chocolate bar, for example, you're gonna get a rush of dopamine. The next time you have that same chocolate bar, you're gonna need the double amount to get the same effect of that dopamine release. And what I was doing was that, that's what I was stuck in. Something that worked for me at the start, so like having a chocolate bar would have given me enough dopamine for when I started binge eating, but towards the end I needed like 4 chocolate bars, ice cream, pizza, burger. I needed all of this food to get the same level of dopamine. And this is why it's so important to start at when you first start noticing that you are using food to get that sense of reward, because it's so much easier to start when it is a smaller amount. When it is such a large amount, it means that that balance of dopamine in your brain is very, very out of whack, for sorry, lack of better word here, is out of whack. And it's going to take longer to balance it out again. So look at the dopamine in your brain like everyone has like a set balance, but people who struggle with impulsive behaviors, anxiety, overthinking, being really sensitive, we tend to have a bit of an imbalance in that dopamine already due to childhood experiences, and also like how we were grown up and how we were raised. Sorry, but also how our mothers felt when they were carrying us in the womb. And when we have that imbalance, we're going to be more sensitive and look for more dopamine rewards. And if we don't, we can get these naturally by understanding our feelings and making room for them and talking about our issues and getting to the root causes of all of these things and healing those traumas. But if we don't have those tools, we're going to look for quick fixes. We're going to look for sex, alcohol, drugs, food, nowadays scrolling on Instagram, dating apps, like all of these, like picking random fights with your partner, like stuff like that. They're the same things. It's just like the same dopamine, it just comes in different packaging. And what happens is that the dopamine goes up, and that means that the other side of the liver, is that what it's called? No. Those thingies that kids go on in school, and it's like one goes up, one goes down. I can't remember. Let's call it a balance. The one side of the balance goes up and the other side goes down, right? And when the dopamine is up, the brain goes, like this is too much dopamine. We're not meant to be to have this much dopamine. This is not a balance. We need to bring the balance back down. So the guilt, the anxiety, the shame, all of that goes back up again. This is kind of like little trolls that are like, oh no, this can't be happening. Let's go fix it. And they go there and they try and fix it. But it doesn't feel good in the body, because then you feel the shame and the guilt and the anxiety and everything that you're trying to suppress even more, and you still don't know how to deal with it. But your brain remembers that last time we felt like this, food helped us temporarily, so you go to eat. Only now that the food that you had last time is not working, because now you need double the amount, so you eat more, and then you feel good again, and then the guilt and all that comes in again. And this keeps on happening, well, forever, until you figure out how to balance it. And some people say to do like a dopamine detox, which means removing your addiction completely. I would only suggest this if you're working with a professional like myself, because what's going to happen is that when you remove your distraction, all of those thoughts and feelings that you've been suppressing are going to come up to the light. And if you still don't know how to deal with them, well, you're just going to find another addiction, or you're going to get too overwhelmed and go into that complete shutdown mode where we just depressed and we feel nothing and we just feel completely numb, because our bodies literally think that we are under so much danger that it needs to shut down completely, because you don't know how to handle this. So if you want to do a dopamine detox, make sure you do work with a qualified professional. And I'm not talking about a nutrition coach or personal trainer, because they're just going to say, oh, just like remove the food or whatever, and not actually give you any tools. And by the way, just journaling is not a tool. You need to also talk, you need to feel, and you need to release the trauma in your body. The trauma in your body is stored in your body, not in your head. You're not going to get through it by talking about it. In fact, it can actually make it worse by talking about it, because you're re-traumatizing yourself. You need to instead understand what is happening in your body to be able to get that release. Trauma, like I said, is stored in the body. And trauma is not about what happens to you, but about what happens inside of you. So my trauma, for example, would be that I never felt good enough for my dad. And that's something that a lot of things might trigger. And then my initial reaction whenever I don't feel good enough, it used to be food, or it started off weight loss. Then it became overeating or binge eating. Then it became tracking macros. Then it became training. Then it became working. And then it became sex. And then it became working again. To be completely honest, I still sometimes struggle with this, with working, but I now know how to get out of that cycle so I don't fall back into that dopamine and guilt balance where I just go up and down and up and down and up and down. So if that is something that you also want to learn about, let's work together, because I have now perfected this method and I know exactly what to do to help you move out of this, to actually feel your feelings and to start setting boundaries, not just with yourself, but with other people again, so that you can take your life back and no longer fall victim to food, alcohol, working, the people pleasing, whatever it is that you are using to help numb those uncomfortable feelings that you don't want to feel. Because it's never really about the food. And you might be listening to this and be like, well, my only problem is that I just snack every now and then. And, sometimes I might finish a whole bag of, or a whole packet of Tim Tam, and that's not that bad. No, it's not that bad. But what would happen if you, like that Tim Tam now, that's not going to be just that forever. Like I said, you're going to need a bigger hit. You're going to need more to get the same desired effect. And this is why you need to get help as soon as you start thinking, I have a problem. Because when you think you have a problem, you have a problem. The fact that that thought is in your mind means that your body knows something is not right and we need help to fix this. Asking for help is actually such a big sign of strength. It is, because us humans, we're not meant to be alone. We're meant to be in a group. We're meant to rely on each other. We're meant to help each other out. Just look back in the hunter-gatherer days. If you were alone, you died. It's just this like new boss bitch and like independent woman kind of thing that's come in lately, that we now are so afraid of asking for help. But you were not born like this. Like a child would never, like a newborn wouldn't survive without help. A newborn doesn't question asking for help or feeling their feelings or expressing their needs. It just does it. It's just that somewhere along the way, you were taught that feeling is bad, asking for help is bad, and that you need to handle everything yourself. So I'm here to tell you that that is not true. You do deserve to get help, and I do want to help you. So if this episode resonated with you, please make sure that you do reach out. All the links are in the show notes below. You can always message me on Instagram as well if there's anything that you have any questions about, or even if you just want to say thank you, that really resonated with me. I'm not ready to sign up right now, but I will in the future. Or if you just want some reads or other recommendations or anything, like my DMs are always open. And as much as I would love to help everyone for free, obviously I can't. I am a business and this is my job. A job that I love so, so much. And I'm so grateful to every single woman on my program that has come to me and has trusted me with their journey. I just love you all so much. And the Empowered Woman group, like the group calls, are literally my favorite part of the week, because everyone just gets a chance to connect and share and be vulnerable. And I just love seeing when one woman shares something that she felt really scared to sharing, and 3 other women raises their hand and say, I feel that too. And it just shows that you are not alone, because whatever you're going through right now, someone else is going through it as well. So let's connect, let's chat, and let's make sure that 2025 is the year that changes everything for you. All right. Thank you so much for listening and watching, guys. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will talk to you next week. Bye.